friend of mine sent to me this morning Psalm 25, verses 8 and 9. Good and upright is the Lord. Therefore he instructs sinners in his ways. He guides the humble in what is right and teaches them his way. Lord God, may we be humble before you in your word this morning. Would you teach us what is right and teach us your way? In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Matthew chapter 1, page 965. This is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar, Perez the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab, Boaz the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David. David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife, Solomon the father of Rehoboam, Rehoboam the father of Abijah, Abijah the father of Asa, Asa the father of Jehoshaphat, Jehoshaphat the father of Jehoram, Jehoram the father of Uzziah, Uzziah the father of Jotham, Jotham the father of Ahaz, Ahaz the father of Hezekiah, Hezekiah the father of Manasseh, Manasseh the father of Amon, Amon the father of Josiah, and Josiah the father of Jeconiah, and his brothers at the time of the exile to Babylon. After the exile to Babylon, Jeconiah was the father of Shealtiel, Shealtiel the father of Zerubbabel, Zerubbabel the father of Abihud, Abihud the father of Eliakim, Eliakim the father of Azor, Azor the father of Zadok, Zadok the father of Achim, Achim the father of Elihud, Elihud the father of Eleazar, Eleazar the father of Matthan, Matthan the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, and Mary was the mother of Jesus, who is called the Messiah. Thus were the 14 generations in all, from Abraham to David, 14 from David to the exile to Babylon, and 14 from the exile to the Messiah. This is how the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. Because Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law, and yet did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins." All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded him, and took Mary home as his wife. But he did not consummate their marriage until she gave birth to a son, and he gave him the name Jesus.
Thanks, Joseph. Please do keep that open in front of you. I wanted to break into spontaneous applause when you finished that genealogy, but nobody else was with me, so I didn't. Now, I did have a sort of extended introduction into this as to how we decided to choose this passage, but this sermon series. This is a new sermon series that we're beginning today, but I'm conscious of time. Needless to say, the main reason for us choosing this is because of our verse for the year, which is Matthew 28, verses 18 to 20, which says, Jesus came to them and said, all That was naughty. And I'm giving you lots of hints throughout these past couple of months that you really do need to learn this. It's only April. It's only 2 verses. And like, you know, we choose this for a reason, and it's not much use if we don't know it. So let me just encourage you to keep doing it. Now, there we get told who Jesus is, the one with all authority in heaven and on earth, that he is part of the triune God, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And we're told how we should respond to that. We respond by obeying him. We do that by going out and making disciples, teaching others about who Jesus is and how to obey him. But what does it mean to obey Jesus? It means to obey all his commands. So right there at the end of Matthew's Gospel, our verse for the year, we're being encouraged to reflect back into the rest of Matthew's Gospel to see what it was that Jesus commanded us to obey. And so given that's our verse for the year, given the focus we want to have on helping one another to obey Jesus more closely, we decided that we'd spend some time in Matthew's Gospel. Make sense? So, some of you are with me. But, Matthew chapter 1, before Matthew tells us what Jesus commanded, he first wants to show us who Jesus is. I mean, why would anyone decide to obey this guy that lived over 2,000 years ago in a part of the world that's completely remote from us, and actually a lot of what he said, as we'll come to see, is really hard to follow. It's really tough to obey. Why would we want to do that? Well, Matthew chapter 1, verse 1, this is the genealogy, the family tree of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And you thought we'd left all those family trees behind in Genesis 1 to 12, didn't you? What is it with the Bible and these long lists of strange names that we struggle to say? Who Do You Think You Are is a BBC documentary where slightly famous people get to trace their family tree back. And they find out about their ancestors, they find out their origins, they find out their family history. You know, Joe Biden's been doing his best to kind of woo the Irish this week, hasn't he? By proving that he really is Irish. I mean, he went to such lengths that he actually went into a local pub and ordered a pint of Guinness. The only thing that could have really done it more is if he'd have gone in there and gone, top of the morning, you know? But it's not just limited to famous people. My dad is desperate to prove that we are somehow Scottish. The problem is he can only get as far as Norfolk. My auntie, on the other hand, has traced us back to Portugal in the 16th century. So, woohoo. But this isn't just a modern day thing. People in Jesus' time were hugely interested and invested in their family tree. And the question of who do you think you are was often a question put to Jesus. Many people wrote him off because of who they thought he was. He's just the son of some carpenter from Nazareth, of all places. Nazareth, ugh. Or is he the son of Joseph? I mean, his birth was in some very odd circumstances. We're not sure he was. Who did Jesus think he was? Well, Matthew wants to show us exactly who Jesus is by showing us his family tree and showing us that Jesus really is, verse 1, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. So, verse 2, Matthew begins his family tree with Abraham. Now, we should know why that's important, right? We've just spent a few months going through Genesis 1 to 12, where we're given the foundations of everything that follows in the Bible. Our last preaching series there, and we're shown in Genesis 1 to 12, we're shown the origins of sin, we're shown the impact of sin, and we're shown in all those family trees that were in those chapters, we're shown that because every person comes from Adam, every person is in the family tree of Adam, therefore we all have the same defect as Adam. We all have this instinct to sin against God. And not only does that sin impact every relationship, every person, every institution, its biggest impact is to separate us from God and place us under his punishment, the judgment of death for our sin. That is why the world is the way it is. That is why we are the way we are. But as bleak as all that was, as bleak as all that is, what we also see in Genesis is that alongside God's judgment is his grace. Yes, he sends humanity away from his presence in Genesis 3, but with the promise that a seed of Eve, a son of Eve, would one day make it all right again. He would crush the devil, he would reverse the curse, and he would bring us back into a right relationship with God. And then you get in Genesis 12, God saying that that person would not only be a seed of Eve, but he would be a son of Abraham. Someone who will enjoy God's presence as he leads God's people back into God's place. And through him, and as a result of him, there is the opportunity for every nation on the earth to be blessed. The son of Abraham would be the one who would reach out across the world to reverse the effects of sin, to bless all the people of the world as he reaches out to offer every person in the world the opportunity to come back into a right relationship with God. See, remember, Abraham wasn't supposed to just be the father of the Jewish people, the hope for the Jewish people. No, he was supposed to be the one who would bring God's joy and peace and power and presence to all the people on the earth. And we see glimpses of that in this family tree that we're given here in Matthew chapter 1. People from different parts of the world experiencing the blessing through Abraham's offspring. So all the way through this family tree, you have so-and-so, the father in so-and-so, the father of so-and-so, the father of so-and-so. But in two places, you get this pattern of the father of whose mother was. The father of whose mother was. It happens in two places. First, it's verse 5. Salmon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Rahab, who is not a Jew, but a Canaanite. But a Canaanite who was protected from God's judgment and invited in to become one of God's people. Goes on. Boaz, the father of Ochbed, whose mother was Ruth. Ruth the Moabite. A Moabite, but someone who again is invited into God's people and receives God's blessing. Can you see that Matthew is highlighting these two non-Jewish people, people of the nations of the earth, who are blessed through Abraham? But what starts with a Canaanite here and a Moabite there is going to one day be something that stretches out to all the nations, to all people across the earth. And Matthew begins his gospel by putting front and center that Jesus is this son of Abraham. He is the promised one who is going to bring God's blessing to all the nations. How will he do that? Again, we saw last time in Genesis, don't we? Genesis 12 through to Matthew 1 through to Matthew 28, where the son of Abraham tells his followers to go and make disciples of all nations. Go and bless all nations by telling them about me and inviting them to come and follow me. Go and tell them about the good news of my kingdom and invite them to come in and be blessed by it. The people of the earth are blessed by God as they hear the good news of who Jesus is and as they repent and seek to obey him with their whole lives, as they enjoy his presence with them as they dwell in his kingdom for all eternity. God's promise to Abraham is kept through Abraham's son Jesus and the proclamation of the good news, the gospel about him. And what Matthew is declaring loud and clear, front and center, what he wants us all to see is that this is Jesus. The hope, that promise is fulfilled. Who do you think you are, Jesus? He's the son of Abraham. but he's also the son of David. See, as we continue to move through the Old Testament, God's promise to Abraham is then linked to his son, to God's king, David. And here we have in Matthew chapter 1, verse 6, Jesus, the son of David. Just flick with me to 2 Samuel chapter 7. It's near the beginning of the Bible in the Old Testament. 2 Samuel chapter 7, which you'll find on page 310. Keep a finger or a mark or something in Matthew 1. We're going back there, but 2 Samuel 7, page 311. Sorry, page 310. 2 Samuel 7 and verse 8, page 310. God is saying, this is God speaking, "Now then, tell my servant David, this is what the Lord Almighty says. I took you from the pasture, from tending the flock, and appointed you ruler over my people. I have been with you wherever you have gone, and I've cut off all your enemies from before you. Now I will make your name great, like the name of the greatest men on earth. And I will provide a place for my people Israel, and I will plant them so that they can have a home of their own and no longer be disturbed. Wicked people shall not oppress them anymore, as they did at the beginning, and have done ever since the time I appointed leaders over my people Israel. I will also give you rest from all your enemies. The Lord declares to you that the Lord himself will establish a house for you. When your days are over and you rest with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you, your own flesh and blood, and I will establish his kingdom. He is the one who will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever." Now, I've not got time this morning to explain everything that happens from Abraham to David. You just need to know that at this point, Abraham has been chosen by God, called out from the pasture, from tending sheep. He's been called out by God to be his king, to lead God's people in God's kingdom. But David, God's king, is not supposed to be like other kings. God's king, his job is to lead the people in faithfulness to God, and he is the person through whom God's blessing comes to the people. And here in 2 Samuel 7, God is promising David that he would raise up one of his offspring, a son, who would reign as God's king over God's people for all eternity. He was a king whose reign would have no end, whose kingdom would have no limit. And it was through this king, verse 10, it was through this king that God's people would enjoy peace and prosperity and permanency. I'm going to plant them, and they would enjoy God's protection. Peace, prosperity, permanency, protection. And it was as this king reigned, and as his authority spreads through all the earth, that all the people of the earth would be blessed. They would be blessed by coming into God's kingdom under his king. And it's this promised king, this anticipated son of David, who comes to be known as the Messiah. The Messiah is God's promised everlasting king who establishes God's everlasting kingdom, who offers God's blessing to all people of the earth. And it's this hope, it's this promise that God keeps holding out to people even in the darkest of times. See, after David, things get messy for God's people. The sons of David turn out to be nothing like what was promised in 2 Samuel 7. And instead of the kings leading people in faithfulness to God, they actually lead them in rebelling against God. The kingdom becomes divided, and eventually, Matthew 1:11 and Matthew 1:12, God sends his people into exile. But God has not given up on his promise. And so he sends a prophet, a man called Isaiah, to warn the people about the exile that's going to come, but also to give the faithful people hope in that exile. And so we get famous passage in Isaiah 9 that we read every Christmas time. Isaiah chapter 9 verse 6, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. Can you hear the echo of 2 Samuel 7? He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing it and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. It's a glorious statement, isn't it? It's a shame most of us don't read it most of the year. You should probably read this every day, along with the verse for the year. But great David's greater son, the one who will reign on David's throne, of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. Everlasting. He will uphold it with justice and righteousness forever. And Matthew says, he's here. That king, he's here. Jesus is the Messiah. He's the everlasting King. He's the Son of David. He's the hope of the nations. And you know, Matthew really, really does want us to see it. He wants to see that Jesus is the perfect and final fulfillment of these promises. Look there in verse 17 of Matthew chapter 1. Thus there were 14 generations in all from Abraham to David, 14 from David to the exile to Babylon, and 14 from the exile to the Messiah. And you think, wow, that's neat, isn't it? 14, 14, 14. Well, you know, 7 is an important number in the Bible, right? What's 2 times 7? Good, just checking. 7's an important number in the Bible. Now, I don't want to sound like Sesame Street. Today's sermon is brought to you by the number 7. But 7 represents perfection. Genesis 1, on the 7th day, God looked at all he created and saw it was very good, and he rested. Perfect. His work of creating at that point done. So 7, or any multiple of 7, like 14, should be like an alarm going, perfect, perfect, perfect. Perfectly perfect, perfect. 3 times 14. Do you see what he's doing? This is a selective family tree. It's not every generation. It's the highlights. And the reason that Matthew is doing that is because he is showing us that Jesus is the final, ultimate, perfect fulfillment of all those promises that were made to David and to Abraham. He is the final perfect son of David, the final perfect son of Abraham. But you know he's not done yet. Jesus is the son of Abraham. He is the son of David, and he's also someone else's son as well. But not the one you'd expect. You see in verse 16, he does something different in the way he describes Joseph's link to Jesus. So if Matthew had followed his pattern, he would have said, Jacob, the father of Joseph, and Joseph, the father of Jesus, right? But instead he does this. He says, Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, and Mary was the mother of Jesus, who is called the Messiah. Why change the pattern? Well, he's making it clear that legally, relationally, Joseph might be the father of Jesus, and that's important for him to be the son of David and the son of Abraham, but biologically, physically, Joseph had nothing to do with it. You say, how can that be? How can someone be born without the physical involvement of a father? Well, and that's what Matthew explains to us in verses 18 to 25. This is how the birth of Jesus the Messiah came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, you understand what that's a polite description of, right? Before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. Matthew is very clear in pointing out that Joseph had nothing to do with Jesus' conception. Verse 25, Joseph and Mary didn't even consummate their marriage until after Jesus was born. Now, Jesus was conceived not through Joseph, but verse 18 and verse 20, through the Holy Spirit. Who do you think you are, Jesus? I'm the Son of God. Remember that description of the Son of David in Isaiah 9? Unto us a son is born, unto us a child is given. What's he going to be called? Wonderful Counselor, Mighty, Everlasting. That doesn't sound very human, does it? Son of David, yet we call him Mighty God, Everlasting Father. The son of Abraham, the son of David, was also going to be a divine person, the Son of God. That somehow this human son was also going to be God himself, Emmanuel, God with us. And that's what Matthew points out, doesn't he? As he quotes again from Isaiah in verse 22 and verse 23, the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. Matthew is saying Jesus is the Son of God, God himself come to live with us. And that is one of the most deepest and most glorious aspects of who Jesus is, that he is the one who is fully human, born of Mary, son of Abraham, son of David, but also fully God, God the Son, Emmanuel, God with us. And he needed to be both. He needed to be everlasting. He needed to be the one who could reign with righteousness. He needed to be the one who could bring peace to the world. He needed to be the one, verse 21, who could save his people from their sins. Because remember where we started. Back in Genesis 3, the fall, the curse, but also the promise. The son of Eve, who would come and crush Satan's head, who would reverse the curse, the one who would save his people from their sin. The one who would help people to enjoy God's presence, to enjoy God's blessing, to be loved and protected and secured in God's everlasting kingdom. But to do that, he needs to deal with our sin. It's that that's got us out of the kingdom. It's that separates us from God's presence. It's that brings God's curse rather than his blessing. And so he needs to deal with that sin. You know, this glorious figure that Isaiah gives us, the wonderful counselor, the mighty God, the everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace, he also describes him later on as a suffering servant. Despised, rejected. Isaiah 53, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him. The wondrous mystery. Jesus, fully man, fully God. Son of Abraham, son of David, Son of God, to save his people from their sins. And in doing so, to fulfill every aspect of every Old Testament promise. To be the one who can bring God's blessings to all people on the earth. Who do you think you are, Jesus? Who do you think Jesus is? Matthew wants us to see that he is the Son of Abraham, the Son of David, the Messiah, the Son of God, Emmanuel. Do you know that Matthew quotes more Old Testament than any other gospel? If you've got a bit lost, if we bounced around the Bible a bit this morning. Some of this big picture stuff it's got you lost. You don't know much about Abraham. You don't know much about David or the Isaiah or the exile, all that happens in between. Then let me encourage you, go read about it. It's fantastic. It's amazing. It's glorious. But hold on to this. All of it is anticipating, pointing us towards, getting us ready for Jesus. And there are Old Testament quotes and prophecies all over Matthew's gospel. And Matthew takes them and he shows us how Jesus is the one who fulfills every prophecy, every promise. He is the one that the whole of the Old Testament points us towards. But Matthew will also go on to show us how many people, including Jewish leaders, people who knew the Old Testament better than anybody, how they sinfully refuse to recognize who Jesus is. And he goes on to point out the danger that puts those people in. And that's not just true of Jewish leaders. There are people all over this world, and I suspect there are people sat here this morning who still sinfully refuse to see who Jesus is. And one thing Matthew will do is he will outline in really clear terms what Jesus said about those who continue to sinfully refuse to recognize who Jesus is, and about the eternal danger that puts them in. And if that is you sat here this morning in that camp, I plead with you for your own good, to look at Jesus this morning and see who he really is. And come before him and ask him to save you, and ask you to bring him into his kingdom. Ask him to bring you into his kingdom. See, I suppose if you want a strapline for the Gospel of Matthew, a sentence to sum it all up, you could use the line from a prayer that Jesus teaches in it. You could say Matthew is all about your kingdom come. Your kingdom come. That the everlasting, glorious, perfect kingdom has come in Jesus the Messiah. Which is why it should be our privilege to go and make disciples. To go out and celebrate and announce this glorious truth that Jesus is come, that this is who he is, and to invite people to come and follow him. To say to people, listen, the hope of the nations is really here. The hope of every person on this earth is Jesus the Messiah, who is the son of Abraham, who is the son of David. And he's inviting you to come into his kingdom and receive his blessings, the blessings of his reign and the blessings of his grace. Try it. Some of us are going to Bible by the Beach in a few weeks, and one of the main speakers there, I was listening to a thing they said this week, and he said, I love to go up to people and say, I've got someone I'd really love you to meet. Oh, really, who? Well, it's Jesus. He's the son of Abraham. He's the son of David. He's the son of God. He's the Messiah. They're bound to go at least. Say again. You tell them this. You tell them this. And you think, well, I don't know how to do that. Well, conveniently for you, there's an equip session next week where we're going to talk to people about how to do that. We're going to encourage one another, so why not come along to that? And there's a whole mission paper that we've given to people, which is about how we take this good news, not just around here, but how we take it to the ends of the earth. Can I encourage you to read it? Can I encourage you to pray about it? Can I encourage you to come and ask us questions about it? And even more than that, we've got an opportunity this week to meet up with one another and help remind one another who Jesus is and therefore why we should follow him. Because that's where we began with all of this. The reason we decided to choose this series is to help us understand what it means to obey all that Jesus commanded. Why would you want to obey all that Jesus commanded? Because of who Jesus is. Jesus, the son of Abraham, the son of David, who's bringing in God's kingdom. The kingdom has come. And we're going to see, as we go through Matthew's gospel, that we're going to see what this kingdom is, and we're going to see how we become a citizen of this kingdom, and we're going to see what living in this kingdom looks like. And as that kingdom spreads throughout time and throughout the world, as the gospel of this kingdom goes out to all people on the earth, as believers, people who see Jesus as he really is, as they submit to his authority, as they live under his rule as God's king, as they go out and share the gospel, as they experience suffering and persecution, as they overcome temptation, and as they wholeheartedly embrace his teaching, we show the world what a blessing it is to know and love and follow Jesus. Jesus, the Son of God, Emmanuel, God with us, strengthening us as we go, as we seek to obey, to go and make disciples, as he says, and surely I will be with you to the very end of the age. It's easy. People who love Jesus, and we come here week after week, it's easy for us to lose sight of who Jesus is, isn't it? As the conflict that rages in our own hearts, as the conflict we experience in our closest relationships, and the stress as the day to day, as we wrestle with the effects of sin in our bodies and in our communities and in our society, when it feels like we're battling everyone and everything and even ourselves, when it feels like God is distant. Why is he doing this? Why hasn't he answered that prayer? Why has he done that in that way? When we see the disappointments in church, the hurts and the frustrations, as we look out and we see the chaos and uncertainty of this world, we can lose sight of who Jesus is. And maybe, if we're honest, we doubt who he is. And Matthew is saying, no, please don't doubt. He really is the one that the whole of the Bible points to. He really is the one who will fill every hope and expectation that God ever gave us. He really is the one through whom God's kingdom has come. He really is the one who is the Savior of the world. He really is the one who can save you from your sin. He really is the one who reigns over God's eternal kingdom, and whose kingdom still continues to this day and will do into eternity, continues to spread across the globe and graciously bring new people under his rule. He really is the one who is going to return and reign eternally with righteousness and justice and peace for the everlasting good of his people. Amen. So I ask you this morning, see Jesus clearly. See who he really is. And I pray that as you do, it will not only renew your strength and your hope and your joy and your peace, but it will draw you to obey Jesus the Messiah even more faithfully. Let me pray. Lord Jesus, help us this morning to stand back and just take in the enormity and the entirety of who you are. Help us to see that you really are the promised one, the long-expected one, the Messiah, and all that that means, that you really are God come to dwell amongst us. That you really are the one who fulfills every promise and every hope and every expectation. Lord, we doubt sometimes, and we become weary and weak, And so please this morning help us to dwell upon the glory of Jesus. And as we do so, may your Spirit be at work in our hearts to convince us and convict us and strengthen us once again as to who Jesus is, that we may love him, that we may obey him, that we may trust him, and that we may proclaim him. To the glory of his name we pray. Amen.